This episode was recorded on Thursday, August 7th, 2025. I took September off, taking a trip across the country looking for gay teachers, and I didn't find any. So hit me up if you want to come on the podcast, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, this is Celeste Taylor, and you found yourself in the lesbian class. Whether you're kayaking, cooking, or painting your bedroom, I'm so happy you're here, and I hope you get a few takeaways. Ring, ring. Class is in session. My guest today is Lindsay Schroeder, a spiritual wellness coach and professional priestess who has been offering spiritual services for over 10 years. She's a queer poly priestess and witch. Please welcome to the lesbian class, Lindsay.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited to have this conversation and to get access to your classroom. As a queer educator in the spiritual space, I'm so excited to connect with more queer educators in that more formal space.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have you here. And I know that you will be able to share so many helpful ideas and tips with everyone. So I really appreciate you being here. Thank you. What was your initiation like into your spiritual life?
So when I was really little, I was extremely intuitive and had to shove that down quite a bit. It got me in trouble when I was very young and didn't understand why or how, and I didn't make sense of it. I remember being at a family gathering and saying a name, and the adults were so angry that someone would say that to me. Like, how does she know that? Who would have told her that? And I was telling them, I'm like, oh, nobody told me, I heard it. And they're like, if you heard it, someone must have told you. And I was like, no. And we're just in this little feedback loop. So often when we see parents with children going like, oh, I know you're lying. And the child's like, no, I didn't do that. And yes, sometimes the child is lying, but other times we find out like, oh, wow, this weird thing happened. Like, I could have never known that they didn't do that. And I was caught in that position so many times as a child and really had to like shove that down. I also grew up going to Catholic school until 8th grade. And so my very unique spirituality did not fit inside that tightly confined container. And so I have never fit in either the classroom or in the confinement of religion that I was given when I was a child. And it's been a lot of reclamation in many, many, many ways.
And so what do you think the pivotal moment for you as an adult was that kind of set you on this path now?
When I went to college and got some physical space and distance from not only my family, but that nucleus that you grow up in, like all of the same people and all of the same places and all of the same perspective and just what you've been saturated in for so long. I went to college and had physical distance and energetic space and distance. And I went into a little shop on my college campus and I was looking for something like a candle or incense. So I went into this spiritual mystical shop and I kept looking at the woman at the desk and we had a conversation telepathically and I kept being like, oh no, I'm making it up. And it started to feel so similar to that moment when I was a child, when I was like, no, I heard it but nobody told me. And like that in our third dimension is like, well, somebody had to tell you if you heard it. And that same, I was like, this is happening. No, it can't be happening. This is happening. No, it can't be happening. And then when I got up to the counter and checked out and bought my like one little box of incense, she acknowledged it and she was like, hey, like, are you a practitioner of this? And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about, lady. And she's like, but you do. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm just bumbling over my words and I can't, like, my logical mind couldn't really understand it. And she wrote me a cute little note of like, you know what, I'm gonna recommend you check out some of these things. And she mentioned some energy work and books and mantras and this, and she just, yeah, take that with you. But she confirmed that like we were engaging, I can't remember exactly how she said it because I was almost blacked out from the intensity of this experience of like me looking at her in the store being like, I'm hearing you in my head and I feel like your facial expressions are acknowledging me the way that we would if we were talking. Like right
Mm.
now, like the way that your face is engaging with me is like I am hearing what you're saying. And I was looking at this lady like there's no way you're hearing what I'm saying in my head right now. And her acknowledging that just like brought so much flooding back to me. And then I had to take quite a bit of time to let it all settle. It was like shaking the snow globe up, and I was like,
Mm.
okay,
Wow.
and from that moment, it was a reclaiming and a remembering. And then there's this beautiful transition moment that you almost can't put your finger on of remembering what's happened to you in this human life, but then it starts going further. And I started going into the Akasha and into my blood and bone and into like remembering that was more than just like Lindsay Schroeder remembering from childhood and bringing these like in this body experiences. I was like, I'm remembering, and it feels clearly remembering things that did not happen to this body, that this mind didn't process. And then I had to really expand and explore. And from that moment, I never looked back.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a gift. I'm presuming you can communicate telepathically only with other people who have that ability also, correct?
Yes and no. So, for instance, with a lot of clients, students, other individuals, even if they don't have what they would define as the similar or same gift or any gifts, even when I'm talking to a lot of my clients aren't necessarily practitioners. They might be someone coming to me as a solopreneur business owner who's maybe a digital marketing agency. And they're like, okay, I'm interested in spirituality, but I don't necessarily see myself as someone who has telepathic powers. If we are working together or in a ceremony or in a container that I'm creating and they allow and they consent and we can share, I can do that work with someone who doesn't identify as having that gift as well.
Wow.
Yeah. And that for
Interesting.
people is sometimes all that they need to go, oh, wait, maybe I am gifted too. And I'm like, yes,
Mm. Mhm.
everybody.
Everything that you've just been talking about and your abilities, I mean, I think that it could be a huge help for teachers, especially my queer educators out there who I want to help. I want to help all of them. And so I'm just you hearing you talk about your gifts, your abilities, the things that you do had me thinking about a teacher friend of mine, and they just went back to work. So school started, and they've only been teaching now for a few days, but they're coming up against a lot of admin, grading. Just I just am seeing a cheese grater whenever I
Yeah.
talk with them. And
Micromanagey, addressing every little thing, being so on top of it just for the purpose of picking and being on top of it. Where it's
yes,
like technically you have something to talk to me about, but if it were someone else, you would probably not be bringing that up.
100%. And the one thing that they just shared with me recently was their principal had said, you can no longer put your pronouns at the end of your emails. And this is huge, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering, how would you help someone like that in a situation like that where they've got a whole other school year, which sounds
Yeah.
like it's going to be so shitty and just
Mhm.
filled with all these little hurdles, unnecessary
Yeah.
hurdles that are being
Yes.
placed in front of them? Do you think that they energetically have are creating these hurdles for themselves, or no, it's just external stuff can still happen and they just need to do whatever's in their power to make themselves basically as impermeable as possible?
Both. I mean, the first thing that I want to say when you're asking me that, I'm going to go super, super logical. And I'm going to say at the end of your email, do MX your name. So instead of Mr. or Mrs., like putting MX and then your name. So it's not your pronouns, you're following the rules, but you're still able to identify that my signifier is different than a man signifier, different than a woman signifier. And like, if then your school system is like, well, we have an issue with this again. Okay, but I'm following the rule that you put out. So now I'm starting to see, and you have that documented that like it is this in all ways, shapes, and forms, and that it's personally going against me because I'm not just conforming. And so I would start in that logical space. First off, how long will it take them to see that, to notice that, to then address that? So you might get that out to a couple of parents. You know what I mean? You might be able to like get that up on the board or have the little name plate made with that and see like what you can kind of get in that feels representative, that allows you to take up space in your own way, which feedback loops into you being stable and confident and safe and sovereign in that, even when the institution, even when the outside is. Which can bring us back to your question of, with a spiritual perspective, am I creating all of the difficulty that I'm experiencing? And I know that a lot of spiritual teachers and perspectives are like, everything is your creation. And, and I understand what they're saying, just like this perspective of like, we are all one. Yes. And we also live in human bodies on planet Earth, in these timelines, in reality, in a dimension that does honor space and time, and there is physical separation. So we also have to ground it down into what it means to be a person, and not just the theory, not just the application of, oh, I've read that sacred text, but like, I'm a person in a body and I have to like teach in this classroom. So yes, your human mind can only take in a certain number of pieces of information at every moment. So how you're directing your focus and your awareness and how much time and energy you give to those things. For instance, when they're like, hey, you have to take your pronouns off. If you sit and focus and ruminate and tell the story, I don't mean process your feelings. I mean, when you start intellectualizing it and telling the story versus feeling the sensation, we all know what I'm talking about when you're like, oh, I'm proving that my feelings are valid by telling the story versus, oh, I'm just feeling the frustration and the anger and the tightness and the sadness and the grief and the loneliness of this. And then when it starts to go, because our sensations move pretty quickly. I don't know if you've ever been panicked when you almost get hit by a car. It leaves your body pretty quickly. And it's then the story of what could have happened. And oh my God, I was so close. That's what causes the problem. So part of it is how we're focusing. So can you go, oh yeah, that sucks. That's really shitty. And process it through the body somatically. And then when you start to loop in the pattern, redirect. And choose where your focus is. Like, for instance, okay, I'm going to go on Etsy right now and I'm going to get one of those little nameplates and it's going to be MX and my name and it's going to be like a couple arrows to that thing or an underline, or even in your email signature, that's bolden and your name is italics. Like really pointing that out, or maybe even highlighting that with your name in regular and shifting your focus. Okay. So yes, we do create our reality by what we're focusing on. It doesn't mean that every piece of information in your reality is of your creation. You have God inside you, but you are not God in totality. So balancing those two things is how we navigate in our human world, in our physical forms.
That makes sense to me. I love how you explain that. When you were talking about when experiences that we don't want to happen are happening, instead of getting into that mental washing machine to redirect our attention, right? Or just to process the anger, the sadness, the whatever comes up, instead of getting into the mind about it. But it's so easy to get into the mind because we always think that this is what's going to solve the problem.
Even if the individual who's experiencing that, maybe from the principal or from the, like, I go into the teacher's lounge and no one wants to sit with me. In our human reality, it might not look worth it because they have no idea how that's playing out for one kid's life and existence and trajectory. And maybe that's the kid that solves cancer in how many years, or cures this, or finds this, or shows us the way that we don't need crude oil anymore. Or maybe that kid just stops the generational trauma and doesn't pass that on to their own child, who then is queer themselves, and they have an entire full circle moment. And so I do believe deeply in the soul contract aspect of it. That's not to leave out, I also deeply believe that we are pattern-based beings. And so when we loop, we a lot of times, and we'll use the reference of romantic relationships, a lot of times we pick our patterns. And so we kind of put ourselves in these situations. For instance, you take this job after hearing about the administration or knowing a little bit or getting feedback or like getting that sense in maybe the interview. And you're
Mhm.
like, oh, you know what? Like maybe I didn't see it, or second guessing yourself or going, I can change it. Again, with like how a lot of us talk about our partners of like, oh, I see the potential, or I can work with that, or I can change it, or they didn't really mean that. Like, explain away our patterns, and then you're 3 months into your school year, and you're like, wow,
Yeah,
yeah,
this
maybe
is
I should have
hell.
been a little bit more honest with myself about that thing.
So true, so true. And I
Yeah.
think it's a familiarity, right? You're talking about
Yes.
patterns. So
Yes.
meeting the horrible principal and the vibe is off, and we subconsciously know, oh, there's something, but then surface level, ooh, yeah, this is very familiar to me. This is
Yes.
safe. Okay, I
Yes.
know this.
So my
Hmm.
body, my nervous system is very regulated, even though my intuition or my mind or these other parts of me are going, oh no, 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 no. But my body is relaxed.
Hmm.
Oh, I'm so calm. Oh, it must be the right fit. I must be overthinking it. And we talk ourselves out of our own inner knowing because of that familiarity. And the human brain, we like what is familiar.
Yeah.
That is just a baseline of all of us. Like, what is familiar, we tell ourselves is safe, and that is how our mind works. And so, you actually have to be responsible for the rewiring of your own mind so that it's not just the default, it's how you choose. What do you want to be familiar? And do you know how to change that? For instance, if you come from a childhood where your queerness was not respected, or it was completely diminished, or maybe you were forced to come out, or it was never acknowledged, or you were forced to wear clothes that didn't represent, it is your responsibility, not your fault, but your responsibility to rewire that and to rework that and to change your experience because of that changing of the subconscious, changing of the familiarity, changing of the nervous system.
And that is a task. And that is when we feel that we have the training wheels on.
Yes.
It's not a smooth sail.
Mm-mm. Because
What's
there's no way, and as a teacher, you guys know this, like, there's no way to get good at something without practicing it. And when you're first practicing, it is the training wheels, it is the Bambi leg, it's the Bambi on ice being like, I don't even know how to control my own body. And it takes facing that at first of like, wow, I'm not in control of my mind. I'm not in control of my body. I'm not in control of my energy. Sometimes my natural default and my desire lines up, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, perfect. But without being taught, and most of us as children, especially as queer children, were not taught the supportive tools to be able to do that. Most of us were taught how to suppress, how to push down, how to conform, and how to kind of move through in as safe as possible. Because from a very young age, or from when you really started to figure that out, you were like, oh, it's not as safe for me as it is for someone else. And maybe we didn't even put two and two together of what that someone else, how they're different from you, because it can happen pretty young where you don't really understand, oh, that's a straight child, and I'm a queer child. We might not even have language or understanding of that, but you're like, it's different for them than for me.
yeah.
It's less safe. I need to control what I think or how I express myself or how my silliness or how my playfulness comes out. I mean, I remember getting married to a boy on one arm and a girl on the other in front of my stuffies, and my mom being like, oh, you can't do that. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm doing it, mom. Like, and then years later, when I came out as poly, she told me that story, and I was like, wait, what? And she's like, oh, yeah, you've always been. And I'm like, and yet I spent a whole amount of time with that shoved down because I was so young and it was so pure, and society was like, nope, 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 nope.
Hmm. Interesting. So, what is a helpful tip that you have for someone who is needing to reset
Mm.
themselves?
Yes. So, first and foremost, nervous system regulation. And for those of you in the classroom, there's a big difference between how you regulate your nervous system outside of the classroom and what is possible and available inside the classroom. So, having a list or an understanding or a note in your phone or just in the mind of what works in these different settings, hearing two kids talking about you and what their parents said or what they overheard from other teachers in the hallway. And you're like, my heart is in the pit of my stomach and I still need to work for another how many hours. And I thought that other teacher was an ally. And like all of these things are happening. Okay, you're in the classroom of like what I can do behind my desk or what I can do while I'm moving around or what I can do while someone else sits in here and I go to the bathroom for 5 minutes is very different than that like full practice once you get home and can close the door and can rock and writhe and wail and really let it out.
See, and people are not rocking or writhing or wailing.
Yes,
I guarantee you, not many people are doing that.
yes. So I would highly recommend that, guys, that at home. And if you need help figuring out, wait, like, okay, I get what she's saying. Like, I get those words, but like, so I just like, what do you mean? I hear the Jennifer Lawrence quote of like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, how do I do this? I would love to support you in that. And I'll actually give you a link to an embodiment training that everyone can watch. And what's really cool about this two-part embodiment training, the first portion is just me talking over my own embodiment practice, and it's an authentic one. There's no fancy lights, there's no makeup. I'm in my mom's old ratty sweatshirt and I'm doing weird stuff like writhing and moaning and itching and pulling and blah. And I'm explaining over the top of it why and what and this. And I find that that de-armors a lot of people. Seeing me be a complete weirdo before I ask you to maybe rock or writhe or try, it de-armors us a lot of like, oh wow, she looked like an absolute crazy person. I could probably like go like this for a little bit. And I think that's a great way to introduce somatics or embodiment for someone who's like, yeah, even if I had a closed doored room and no one else was in my house, I don't know if I could rock or writhe or moan on my own without some support.
Well, it has been ingrained, I think, in most of us in society that, if you do something like that, you have mental issues or something. I started doing tension release exercises years ago,
Yeah.
TRE,
Uh-huh.
and
I'm like feeling it as you talk about it.
and I still need to do a bunch. And I was taught that the goal of these exercises was to start shaking. And I
Yeah.
said, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, what? Shaking? That doesn't sound like it's good for my body to be
Right.
shaking.
Mm,
That's anxiety. That's panic attack. That I don't want any of that. And
mm,
then my
yeah.
teacher was telling me, think about dogs.
Mm-hmm.
They instinctively start
Yeah.
shaking, or they'll shake it off, right? They'll shake
Yeah.
it off. They have an incident that riles them, they'll shake
Mm-hmm.
instinctively, unless their owners or whomever yank them or teach them out of it
Yes.
also, right? Like we've been taught out of it. But you see people with autism, they shake, they rock, and our bodies do need that release
Yes.
to get it out of the body, because then I've got the body keeps the score on my
Yeah.
shelf behind me. It gets stuck in the body, and I got so sick after
Yes.
only being in the classroom for 6 years because I didn't release
Yeah.
anything.
Trash compactor it. I say it's
Yeah.
trash compacting for so many people when they come to me and they're like, okay, I want to work on this one little thing. And I'm like, okay, but we have like years and years and years, this tiny little compressed cube, like Wally little cube inside you of like all the shit that you never let move through you. And I think one of the important things to point out in that situation, say for instance, we're talking about distress in the classroom around your queer identity. When that individual thing happens, your reaction, what it stimulates in the body, is not just about that one thing unless you've released everything
Mm,
else. So one kid saying one thing about a teacher over here could go all the way down to when your parent first addressed it, to when your coach called you out for being queer in your sports team, when it was spotlighted that you were when you were the first time you were aware that, oh wait, I'm the only queer person here.
mm,
Or every time you go to a wedding before you have a partner and you're like, I am the only uncoupled and I'm queer and this is a very straight wedding. Oh my God. Those moments, they don't just move through us as that individual experience. Everything in your trash compactor Your nervous system is reacting as if all of those things are happening at the same time. The
Mm,
level, the intensity, the potency, which is why it confuses us so often. We're like, why am I so ruminating, stuck? Why do I
right.
keep playing it? Because you're not just playing what Tommy or Susie or whatever said in your classroom, you're replaying all of those things from a somatic perspective. So your mind might be just saying one thing, but your body's experiencing the totality of it.
100%. And then oftentimes it's a very minimal incident. And then all of a sudden it's, uh, and
Yes.
then that's the little piece that kind of like knocks the whole pyramid of blocks over. Or that's the
Hmm.
little piece that blows your trash compactor up, that it
Yes.
can't compact anymore.
Those of us who are outside of corporate, outside of, a classroom, even those in corporate, like you have heard or seen of someone in corporate losing their shit, popping off, blah, blah, blah. You can't do that in a classroom. When you're around children, it is very different than when you are surrounded by other adults or when, like me, you make your own schedule, you handle your own, like you're choosing who you're working with. I feel like in a classroom, it is one of the most difficult situations because you don't get to choose the other teachers. You don't get to choose the kids. You don't get to choose the parents. You don't get to choose there's so much, and there's no room for you to lose it.
Nope.
There's no room for your trash compactor to explode everywhere because if that ever affects one of the children, if that ever spills over, that's very different than like you maybe losing it with a colleague in a corporate setting and maybe having a little bit too much bite. When you have a little too much bite with a child, that child goes back and tells their parents. Those parents talk to the administration. And then when you are queer, you have this other thing that they have, as we've
Right.
already referenced, to be able to latch onto. And so you're held to this very necessary. I understand, like with a child, like I understand why this is necessary, but also coming to terms with the fact that like, you are in a consistent performance. Every moment
Yes.
that you are in the classroom, you are a prima ballerina up on the stage, and any misstep, any wobble, we all see and could end your career.
Well said. Well said from a non-teacher. I'm shocked. You nailed it as far as especially with elementary school
Yes.
teachers. I mean, middle and high school teachers. My niece just graduated high school. She was telling me about a few interactions she had with teachers this last year, and I thought, but it's high school, I guess, But
Hmm.
you
And are they
nailed it.
queer? And is the administration supportive of them? Again, like any of those little things and any of
Mm,
these settings, and we won't limit it to just queer. If you're a individual of color, if you have a different religious background, like anything that makes us other, it's so easy for a parent, the administration, when they want something to latch on to that. And
mm,
I deeply understand that from having clients that are teachers. I also deeply understand that with having clients who have children in classrooms and are dealing with it both in the positive as well as the negative. Like I've talked to, you know, children of my clients who have lost a teacher to the burnout because they're other. And they're like, that was my favorite teacher. That was the only teacher that got it. That was the teacher that made a difference for me. And like they left or chose not to work at this school or moved or did these other things because of those situations. Like, hey, you're no longer allowed to put your pronouns on here. And we're choosing to pick on just you because we can.
yep, it's exhausting. And then someone, me, anyone in that situation you're speaking of, will get to the place where it's not worth it
Yes.
because mental health degrades. Everything's just getting chipped away at. I
Hmm.
left the profession, unfortunately, retired early because, yeah, I was really worried about my physical health, my mental health,
Yes.
and I love children are my favorite population to work with.
They're not
But
indoctrinated like we are. They haven't
yeah,
spent years upon years upon years getting programmed. And
yeah,
until a child is about 7 or 8, they're in absorption mode. And so like everything's getting in there. And so when you're interacting with children before that, like there's such a purity to it, and
Yeah.
there's such a massive difference than you could make just from what it is that you are placing into their subconscious, just from your very being.
Yeah. It's a very powerful, powerful job, especially
Yes.
pre-K, K, first E teachers. Yeah, very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, everyone has to protect themselves, right? So no one's going to look after me better than I can.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
nobody has the access to looking after us as individuals like we do. Because you have access to your conscious, your subconscious, your superconscious. You have access to your breath. You have access to your somatic practice. You have access to your energy. Like, yes, benefiting from teachers, mentors, guides, leaders, practitioners, like as one, I'm like, you can benefit so much from that. However, I can't do the embodiment work for you. I can't do the integration. I can give you the template, the overview. I can guide you through. I can provide you the recording. Like I could give you those answers, but the implementation and the integration and the embodiment of it, that is only the individual who can do that.
Yeah. Makes
Yeah.
sense. I guess
Mm.
no different than any teacher, right?
Yes.
We give students the tools, right?
Yes.
You do this, but it's up to each student to implement what they've
Mm-hmm.
been taught. I think everyone would really benefit from even say a 1 or 2 minute something to do in the classroom, especially
Yeah.
the kids are around. Yeah, I'm sure people would probably be limited to a minute or two
Or even
because
including them. Like, is there
yeah.
anybody else who needs a little break, who needs to regulate their nervous system? Is there anybody who's a little bit overwhelmed with this assignment? Or is, especially those ADHD kids of like, are you jumping around and you're not actually focused on your, okay, let's all, if you'd like to join me. One of my favorite ones is literally just shaking. So
Mm,
very similar to what we were talking about, the dog or the antelope that almost gets attacked by a lion, their entire body shakes and it actually purges the cortisol from the body.
mm,
So you can do this with your hands. You can do this with your entire arm. If you're trying to keep this underneath a desk, you can engage like your thigh muscles, pull your legs up a little bit and like shake the ankles
oh,
or shake the knees. If you're like, oh, it's during a quiet test and I can't really like distract them with my arms flailing all over. We can also pull the shoulders up tight to the ears and then drop.
oh, yeah, I've done that one.
Oh. And that
Yeah.
sensation of like, oh, I'm really, really, really working at this, and then I'm letting go fully. A lot of us have a much bigger issue with the letting go, the like clench, force, tighten. We're like, oh yeah, I got it. And then when I'm like, okay, drop, and they're like, and I'm like, no, that's setting your shoulders down. Let's actually clench our little fists, clench our arms, clench our shoulder, and then drop. And like let the hands open up, let the fists relax, let the shoulder relax. We can go up and back and down and open that heart space and kind of pull our elbows back and really allow the heart to open, lift the throat, lift the face, stretch this part. We can go side to side while we're holding those elbows back and allowing the heart to take up some more space. And then one of my absolute favorites for in a classroom is, and you don't have to use your finger, but I'll use my finger so that you can really see it. Following with just your eyes all the way past your shoulder, so beyond the like even plane, and then bringing it back and going to the other side. And I like to hold my eyes to the strong side, like as far as you can look in that direction to the right, and then as far as you can look to that direction in the left, helping to reset the vagus nerve.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
And then when you come back to, oh, my reality, because
mm,
it takes so much focus and almost strain and pressure, very similar to like the clenching, then when you come back, you perceive things differently.
mm.
The density, the tonality, the availability. You're like, okay, I'm a little bit more settled. I'm a little bit more capable.
I love
Let's
that.
go again.
I love that. And it would be interesting to see. My neck was really tight when we first did this. One went to the left, but after doing
Mhm.
the following my finger, it's
Yes.
looser now.
Yes. And really just like stretching the eyes. And you can do this without your fingers. So just sitting at your desk, stretching the eyes, keeping and a lot of times I gotta like adjust my chin back to the front where I feel like my head's starting to tilt, and I'm like, okay, back to the front, move in the eyes. And
Hmm.
then the other way, because we tend to want to like lean towards where we're looking,
Hmm.
and just keeping your chin facing forward, keeping your shoulders squared, keeping your hips square, and then moving your eyes as much as possible to that strong left side, to the strong right side, and then coming back to the center. And you will truly feel a sense of relaxation and an honest reset. Our IT friends would be like, okay, you just powered down and you turned back on. And how many times is that the solution for like, well, did you turn it off and turn it back on? You're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, let me do that, and then I'll call you back in 5 minutes when it's still not working. And then you're like, never mind, it worked.
Right? It's
Yeah.
true.
Yes.
Everything just needs a little rest sometimes.
Yes.
Thank you. That was
Welcome.
excellent. See, and
Mm,
these are the things that I think people who are struggling think that they need to commit 30 minutes, an hour to really reset and get themselves
yeah.
straight, or just in a better mindset energy. And it was a minute or two that we
Yeah.
did that. And it is a really good feeling afterward. It's a
Hmm.
great reset. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's start with those bite-sized things that really give you tangible results, because when you get those little wins, just like with your students, when they have those little wins, then they're more willing to take the bigger risk. Then they're more willing to commit to, oh, I do want to do a good job on this project because I did get an A on that and I saw that it's possible. So now I'm willing to go a little bit further. So turning that perspective that you give so easily to your students onto yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And to go back to what you were saying earlier, too, is those exercises you just led us through would be great to have the whole
Yeah.
class participate in.
Yes.
The kids would be able to do that easily. Even kinders would be able to do both of those.
And when you teach them that, and then in the midst of a regular class, you see one of them doing that, that gives you that piece of information that they're going through something. So maybe the topic that you're talking about, or then you recognize that the student next to them is spending a lot of time talking at them, or that's when you see that, like, oh, there's a note being passed around, or that's when you pay more attention to what's being said in the halls about them. Like, it gives you that lens in, because you will see certain students start to like, oh, wow, that really helped. And when they have a dysregulated nervous system and you give them a solution that works, you will see them use it more.
Yeah, back in the day, back when I was still teaching, which wasn't that long ago, but
Mhm.
there's I don't know if it's still a popular website, but it was called Go Noodle. And so Go Noodle has brain breaks. And
Oh, cool.
so the idea at the time was, if I was teaching first grade, which I was that year, 6 years old, they had a 6 minute attention span. So I would teach for
Mhm.
6 minutes, we would do a brain break, right? Teach for another 6 minutes, get up, brain break. 6 minutes, brain break. And Go Noodle
Yeah,
started offering a whole bunch of meta meditations of sorts, just calming and loving kindness. And it was great. I mean, the kids
that's
really take to
awesome.
it. They really take to it really quickly.
It's more common for them than it is for us. They inherently understand it way faster, easier, more efficiently than we do, because it's closer to their natural state.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they are much more present than we as adults typically are, because they know how to get lost in something in a way that a lot of times for adults, our vision narrows down to maybe one of our hobbies or our few moments of alone time. But as a child, you're able to really get lost in so much, and you don't have as many judgments and you don't have as many constraints to navigate around. Regulating your nervous system in your classroom will change your ability to navigate the difficult moments so much. I know you mentioned at the beginning that self-confidence and self-assuredness and the like safety in who you are, being a queer individual and being a queer educator, especially, just the reality of we're not the majority in pretty much every place that we go, and we know that that is so true in the classroom, that as a queer educator, I don't know anybody who's in a school where that's the majority. So establishing confidence in yourself and the self-soothing and the being able to stand firm in who you are. Because I know a lot of times it can be a lot easier to just like pull back a little bit more and share less and less and less of you. One of the things that I would love to share with you guys is how to protect your own energy in a really practical way. So even if you're not woo-woo at all, we can go fully science. Science agrees that you have an electromagnetic field. So if you're like, auric field, silly goose over there, totally fine. I will speak to you in the science. And for those of you who are interested in the more magical, know that like I can say it in a lot more magical ways. But we all have an electromagnetic field around us that goes beyond your physical body, that goes beyond your brain. This is how you know when someone's looking at you when you're on public transit and you're like, oh, I just, like, I could feel it before I caught your gaze. So, a very technical way that you can close down your energy and protect yourself so that it doesn't infiltrate as much. There's a difference between hearing what someone's saying and feeling what someone's saying. And especially in the classroom, where if you get that feeling in and it starts to like monkey mind run you and brings you into that panic space, that is not beneficial for you as the individual, your mental health, your regulation. So the best way to do this is I'm going to give you two different ones and try whichever one feels good for you. You can take your left hand and place your right hand over the top, and we're going to put that down at like the root, almost if you're sticking your hand straight down. And we're just going to bring that up over the front of our body and make a little circle around us. And if we were standing up, we'd be able to like put our hands all the way down. Basically, what I want you to envision is that you're zipping up that electromagnetic bubble, just like a little zipper going up and then around you. And you just do that a couple of times and really envision yourself, or if you're a science teacher, closing down the permeability of your cell wall. We'll get a little nerdy there, just so that you are in your own space with just you. You're willing to hear and you're willing to see outside of yourself, but that it's not getting in, it's not changing how you're feeling about yourself. And so if you are hearing something, if you are seeing something and you start to feel it getting in, you can do that another time just to redo that. If you don't want to use your hands, maybe in the middle of a lesson, you're like, oh, I'm feeling it get in there. Just take a deep breath in through the nose, which kind of draws your focus inward. And then when you're breathing out, envision that you are feeling like a bubble around yourself. I like to do a like opalescent little bubble, almost like if you were blowing a bubble where you see the like oil slick on it, but you can do that in whatever color or whatever texture makes you feel protected. But you breathe in and you kind of gather your energy in, and then when you breathe out, envision that balloon or that bubble around you. And this is just going to allow your brain and your body and your energy to go, this is me and that is not me. And that conscious awareness activating your reticular activating system and going, okay, I know that this is me, by pulling the breath in, coming close to self, and then filling just my container, gives you some separation energetically from you and everything else, which will make it a lot easier for you to make better choices, stay in the tonality that you want, hold your body in the way that you want, come back to yourself, who you know you are, not triggered you.
And I do that, and I surround myself with the pink light of love.
Yeah.
Pink, so my bubble's always pink, and I do this before I go into Costco. So
yes, that's a good one.
Yes, I will actually do it many times throughout the day, especially if I have to go out run errands like that, you know. I think that's a great tool also. And put the intention out there. Any negativity is going to reflect right off of this and go back to the person with blessings, you know?
Yes, yes, yes.
Because, you know, I was thinking about it. The last school I taught at, I was surrounded by mean girls, as I affectionately call them now. My self-acceptance, all-time low those years. My self-worth, and I was in this constant state of comparison, thinking I would be a part of their clique if I were straight. But I don't know that, you know? And they all had several things in common, all negative. I wouldn't have jived with them regardless. Let's just
Mm-hmm.
be honest, right? Let's be honest. But so when I was thinking about my low self-worth those years and low self-esteem, and I was thinking, wow, did I struggle setting boundaries those years with parents, with
Yeah.
them, my colleagues, with admin, with the students, not so much, but probably more so than in other years. And
Yes.
then what I also lacked those years is I wasn't celebrating any of my strengths.
Mm,
And I think that those are two things that queer educators really need to really have a stronghold on is setting good boundaries
yes.
and celebrating their strengths. How would you teach someone to be a good boundary setter? What
Mm,
would your advice be to someone and how to set healthy boundaries, especially
yes.
in the classroom?
Yes. So, first and foremost, with a boundary, understanding that this boundary is intentional in the sense that, like, this is how we get to interact. This is how we get to engage. I think when we start from the place of boundaries are keeping people out, that we tend to project a different energy around it. That, especially those of us who are other, when we project that, like, get out of here with our boundaries, it gets people irritated. It can get people angry. It can make them feel similar to how we're feeling, being isolated, being out of. And so if we're just sending that back and forth, it's just getting worse and worse and worse between us. Whereas if we're seeing it as like, here is the gate for how you get in, you can only get in this way, but I'm
Mm.
showing you where the gate is. And I think that reframe for boundaries can be really beneficial. Instead of focusing on what, oh, I won't accept, I won't do this, you identify that for yourself, but what is the gate? What is the entrance? I'm available for this. This is how you bring that to me. I would love to talk about that if you're willing to not address it in the hallway right now or not send me a passive aggressive email. Why don't you grab a coffee and we'll come in a little bit early and talk about it together? So, yes, identifying your boundary of like what you're not available for, what you're not going to engage in, but how are you languaging that to another? Focus on the gate.
Wow.
Makes a big difference.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just see really good results coming from that too.
It makes it much harder for that other person to like, no, it puts them in the position of like, we both clearly understand that you're just like kind of giving me the middle finger because you're not willing to enter in through the gate.
Right.
And
And
that's reflective of you, not of me. I showed you how to get in here. I'm not telling you you're not allowed in here. I'm saying you have to enter through the garden gate. You have to walk on the stone path. Like, don't trample my flowers.
how would you handle a boundary pusher, someone who's blatantly no
Hmm.
regard for the gate that you've clearly communicated to the
Hmm.
person? And I'm just thinking about a parent right now. But
Yeah.
so, how would you handle a situation like that?
Staying regulated is first and foremost, just like with a child, of like, we're not going to be able to help them move through their big feelings if we ourselves are meeting them in their big feelings. So, especially with parents, sometimes that is.
For those of you listening, Lindsay
Mm,
is taking deep breaths right now.
Okay, can you say that one more time for me? And making
mm,
them repeat that shitty comment, that boundary pushing remark. What did you mean by that? What was your intention? Taking that defined breath that pauses us, showing that you are in control of your own nervous system, and then going, okay, one more time. Okay, can you repeat that? What did you intend by that statement? Where did you think we were going to get by saying that? And putting them in that hot seat. So, for
mm.
instance, if you tell a parent, hey, when you pick up your kid from their after school program, you cannot come into my classroom and interrupt my like grading paper time. And they walk in and they start talking to you, and
Mm.
you put your grading pen down and you look up at them and say, I know that I've already addressed with you that I'm not available to have conversations right now. I'm going to ask that you head out. You can send me an email, book the time, and you're just reiterating what you've already stated, and you're not engaging with their, oh, but this is why I'm doing, and oh, so and so. We've
Yeah.
already, and like verbatim what you've said in that email that address, but because you took the breath and you're
Mm.
here and you're present, you're able to stay in that. A lot of times we ourselves give up being in control and in the driver's seat by engaging. Oh, I understand that you're blah, blah, blah. And you meet them in that vibration. Just like when our child's tantruming or someone in our class is tantruming. Yeah, it would feel really good to scream the same way there, but we can't do that. So it would be really great to meet you in this that you're in, but like that's not going to benefit me. So I'm going to take my deep breath. I'm going to face you fully because sometimes when you face someone fully and you give them your full eye contact, your full presence, and you're bubbled now, so you are your own self and they're not getting in. So they're now having to receive your full self, your full regulated self, who is just reiterating what you've already addressed. Because a boundary pusher is someone who you've already addressed that boundary to, probably several times.
Yep. Yep.
Mhm.
I think two things right now. You would make an excellent teacher. And also, I think that even hearing your ideas has made me feel so empowered. I honestly thought, oh, I can go back to the
You can
classroom
go
now.
back.
I can go back. I'm empowered. I will have a
Yes.
whole different experience.
Yes, you totally could.
I love it. So, do you want to share your socials? How do people find
Yes.
you on the internet?
Yeah, so if you are on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or Threads or any and all of those things, my handle is Our and R, OURANDARE. You can also email me at ourandr@gmail.com. And then I am actually launching a podcast tomorrow. So by the time this comes out, it will be out, the Professional Priestess Podcast. So you can find me
Ooh.
on social channels at Professional Priestess Podcast or Pod.
Professional Priestess Podcast. I love it. Is it going to be you just sharing information or are you going to be interviewing people also?
Yes, both. So I'm going to be sharing and providing like active practices and letting both individuals and clients and students see behind the veil and meet other priestesses too, and really bring us to the forefront and help people understand what is a priestess, what is a mystic, what are these things, and then for priestesses and other mystical, magical medicine women, bringing us together because we are in the modern age, and unfortunately, we're not in little tribes or villages anymore. And when you start showing these gifts, you get sent to the town shaman or the village midwife, and you get brought up in this lineage. Most of us have had to like claw and crawl and find our way through it. And so, bringing other magical workers together to have these conversations and to be seen in this way and to get their message out there and be supported by another magical worker has been just so juicy, and I'm loving it so much already, and I can feel the magnitude of it.
Ooh, congratulations on
Thank
your
you.
upcoming podcast. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on my podcast.
Thank you
And
for having me. This was so much fun.
I feel as though you and I could have a part 2 and a part 3 at least,
Yes.
because I could talk with you
Yeah.
forever.
Yes. So those of you listening, let us know. What do you want to hear more about? Tell us what sparked your curiosity. What did you hear a tiny little flicker of that you're like, I want more of that? Because part 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 could be coming to you. Let us know what you're wanting to hear.
There you go. Lindsay's a natural. Your podcast is going to be great.
Thank you.
Well, so as we wrap up, do you want to share with everyone what gay thing or things you're doing these days?
Yes. And before, it's funny because before we started recording, I was like, is this okay to share?
And I said
So
yes.
one of the gay things that I'm doing right now that has been a part of my practice, but being a gay person is a little bit different than when it's in someone else's practice. I practice sex magic, and a lot of what's taught around sex magic is very focused on the masculine and the feminine coming together and being in queer relationship. Like my partner right now is non-binary, and then I have a platonic life partner. And so bringing together in sex magic the practice of engaging with the magic of both the body and the intention with the bodies in a queer way, to me, is such a sacred reclamation, because each of us holds the masculine and the feminine. And so the weaving of this and the speaking of it has been really profound, because very similar to religion, a lot of time queer is not included in these teachings, is not talked about, or if it is, it's about, oh, queer sex is, and then all of the negative rhetoric that we've all heard so much about. And so being able to be inspired by a teacher, my mentor, Mami Onami, teaches sex magic in a way that is so inclusive. Even though she is part of a straight relationship, she goes out of her way to speak with clarity that sex magic is not limited to just the masculine coming together with the feminine in those physical forms, and that you don't even need a partner for sex magic, that you can actually practice that your own self, being the giver and the receiver. So that is the gay thing that I've been really deep in and focused on and have been loving sharing, because just like religion has told so many of us that we're wrong, sex magic has told so many of us that we're wrong, and I want to be whatever part I can of changing that for many of us.
Oh, that's awesome. Something to look into. And was there one other thing that you wanted to share?
Oh, I'll have to say the Hunting Wives is the gay thing that I have watched recently, which I think is so funny, because it is, in my opinion, for so much of a straight audience. But I am a Brittany Snow lover for such a long time. And so when I heard that, one of my friends reached out and was like, Lindsay, Brittany Snow has finally gone gay. And they like sent me that in a text, and before the second bubble came through of like in a show, I was like, oh my God, yeah. And then she was like on a TV show, Lindsay, and I was like, okay, toning it down. Still, yay.
Yeah. Well, she kissed
Anna.
She kissed Anna in Pitch Perfect, didn't she?
Yes. So she's been queer baiting us for a really long time, and they've been talking about it for a really long time. But this is definitely, like, if anybody's seen the Hunting Wives, it's a little bit different than her and Anna Kendrick's flirtation and Pitch Perfect. So
very much.
And
so.
After everything that happened with her husband and the cheating and all that, I'm like, maybe after a little bit, I mean, like, she's choosing these roles. So, and I've loved Brittany Snow for so long, so I'm really glad that she's reclaiming her power and navigating that crappy situation by taking some fun ass projects with some dope ass women and just being like, look at how beautiful I am and how much fun I'm having, and like, middle finger to that individual who put her in that crappy situation. So those are the gay things that I've been doing recently.
Lindsay, thank you so much for coming on my podcast.
Thank you for having me. I had such a good time.
Take care. Thank you all for listening. Bye.